Hey everyone, welcome back to another video, and in today's video we have this 2023 Audi A3, and for this installation video I'm going to show you guys how to install the front panel portion of this vehicle. So what I mean by the front panel, we're going to have different sections for the installation. So we're going to have one installation video for the front grille, another one for the lower splitter here, and the other video will be for the bezels on the side of the bumper. So depending on what product you purchase, you would just look for the chapters for your specific installation and you will go from there. So with that being said, so this is how it looks before doing the installation on the front panels, and this is how it looks after the installation. So for this installation we use the gloss black material, that way it matches with the color scheme of the grille and also gives the vehicle a sportier look. Link for the products will be in the description below. But with that being said, let's get started with the installation video. Okay, so before starting with the installation for either of the panels, you want to make sure you prep the panels before doing the installation. So what I mean by prepping, it would be removing any contaminants, any dirt that the panels may have. So you could take the vehicle to get it washed to remove all of the dirt that the panels may have, or another option would be just adding water and baby shampoo into a spray bottle and applying the spray bottle onto your microfiber towel. And then once you spray it on your microfiber towel, you would remove and clean off the contaminants from the panel. And also something to keep in mind, once you finish cleaning the panel you're going to be installing, we recommend having the panel completely dry. The reason being because if the panel is still wet and water gets behind the adhesive, the film is not going to stick properly onto the panel and it's just going to lift afterwards. So make sure everything is completely dry before starting with the installation. So once you finish prepping the panels, you can start with the installation. So for this one, we're going to start off with the installation for the front grille only. To start off the installation for the front grille, grab the film that goes on the lower section of the grille here and apply it from one end. So when you're trying to figure out where exactly to install it, you're going to feel that there's a curved design on the chrome panel here. Right where the curved design is about to go flat, that's where you would line up the film. You could go above, it doesn't really matter, just as long as it's roughly around this area. And then all I'm doing is just aligning the film to the top section of the chrome here. If you do have excess material, that's perfectly fine on the top section. Reason being is because we will trim it off afterwards. So just make sure when you're installing it, it's aligned and you're covering the chrome from the top layer. And if you need to adjust it, lift the film carefully and adjust it, and then just help the film tack down like that. And then once you place the film, grab your squeegee and start tacking down the film. Make sure there's no air bubbles behind the film. And then once you finish tacking down the flat area here, start from the middle and work your way from one end and then the other side. So tack down the middle, help it go inside here underneath the chrome, and just work your way to each side. And just make sure this middle section here, you remove the air as well. You don't want to accidentally have air bubbles here in the middle. So carefully lift the film and make sure to remove all the air here and then tack it down. And then right here, you might do a little stretching just to help remove any fingers or any air bubbles, so it could stay flat like this. And then you just rinse and repeat the same steps to this side. Make sure the middle section here doesn't have any air, and if it does, carefully lift the film and remove the air. And then just start tacking the rest down. Okay, and that's pretty much it for this part. Afterwards, you just trim off the excess material, or you could tuck as much as you can inside the middle section. So it's different options when it comes to the installation. Just make sure the final result is that panel is being covered. That will be the result. And you would just grab your blade. You only need a little bit of the blade popping out. Find the small gap between the grille and the chrome panel and trim off that excess material. And that's pretty much it. And now you just move on to the side pieces. So when it comes to installing the side piece, the same steps that you do on one side, you just rinse and repeat to the other end. So with this one, make sure you just start off wherever you left off. You could either overlap or try to align it as close to it as possible. And then once you have it aligned, just start tacking down the whole film. And then if you need to adjust it, like I said, lift it carefully and just make sure you're covering the chrome on this section here and on this side as well. So then grab your squeegee and start tacking down the film. And then you just do the same on this side, start tacking it down. And And then the excess material, we could trim it off right in the small gap between the grille and the chrome panel here. And same on this side, we'll just trim it off where there's a gap between the panel and the bumper. Okay, so grab your blade and start carefully trimming off the excess material. Just be careful not to scratch your panel. Take your time, see how it's looking. That should be good. And just finish off with the rest of the panel. So we left off here. And then trim off the excess material on the other side. And that's it. So like I said, the same steps that you would do for this side, rinse and repeat for the other side. Once you finish installing both, you move on to the top piece. Okay, so when it comes to installing the last top piece for the front grille, you could start by aligning it from one side of this curved section here. Align it right around there, and the other part, just place it for now. Don't tack it down just yet. And then with this one, you could use the top half of the panel as a guide to align the film, and just give yourself, if you can, a little bit of excess material just to tuck in inside the panel here to cover as much chrome as possible. And then just work your way with the rest of the film until you reach to this end. So it should look like this. And just finish off on this side. Lift the film carefully and make sure it's just aligned and it reaches the other edge. Once you place the film, grab your squeegee and start tacking the whole film down. And in the area where you could tuck in the film, just tuck in the film. And if you have just a little bit of excess material, then we would just trim it off. But just tuck in whatever you can. And once you finish tacking down the flat surface here, just work your way and tucking in the rest of the film. So it's just basically almost the same thing as how we did it for the lower section. Just make sure you don't leave any air bubbles, and that's pretty much it. And then now we would just apply heat all around the top section here to help tuck in and tack down any film that's still lifting. And then once we're done, we'll trim off the excess material. So grab your heat gun and start applying heat. Okay, let the film cool off just a bit, and then once the film has cooled off enough, we can start trimming all of the excess material that we have around the area. And then once we finish trimming off all the excess material, we will go ahead and finish off this installation for the front grille by post heating the whole entire set. So once you finish trimming off all that excess material, the last thing to do is post heat the whole front grille. So to post heat, grab your heat gun, heat up all the edges of the grille. Make sure you heat up the whole area, just so we can help the adhesive on the film activate faster. And also we tack down any film that's still lifting. And then once you're done with the post heating, you're done with the installation for the front grille. So now we're moving on to the installation video for this lower splitter here. So with this one, we covered the top piece and the bottom section here. The only thing with the bottom section though is we made it a separate piece. That way it does a full coverage on the lower section here. So with this one, you're going to have to go underneath the vehicle and work from installing from one end, making sure you cover everything on the bottom half and reaching it to the other end. So I'm gonna show you guys how to go about it. So for right now, just lay the film and I'll show you where to start. Okay, so when it comes to installing the lower section here, start by aligning it to this edge of the chrome panel first. So you could give yourself a little bit of extra material to cover more of the panel here. So it should be roughly around there. As long as you have full coverage, that should be perfectly fine. So that should be good around here. And then just follow along with the rest of the panel, but just be careful that the film doesn't touch the floor. That way it doesn't get dirty. So make sure you're holding it on the other end and just work your way on installing the rest of the film. If you need to lift it and readjust it, you can. It's just taking your time and installing the whole panel. So this one can be a little tricky, but just take your time on working on each section. Okay, so once the whole film has been placed, now you could grab your squeegee and start tacking down the flat surface. So make sure you remove all of the air behind the film and just flatten it out. You'll do this all across the film and just bring the film up here, and all that excess material that's coming up on the lower section here, we will just trim it off. But for right now, we're just focusing on tagging down the film. Okay, and to trim off that excess material that's on this lower section here, we will just find the small gap between the panel here and the lower trim of the bumper here. And once we find it, we will put our blade right in the middle and trim off that excess material. So for example here, find the gap, should be roughly around here, and then just trim off that excess material. And I'll show you how it should look like. So let's remove this piece for now. And it should look like this once you find that gap. And you just proceed to do the same for anywhere else on the lower trim where there's extra excess material. And then once you're done, you will finish off with the installation on the top section here. Okay, and once you finish fixing the lower portion of the film, just continue on with the top. Help the film tack down on the top section here. Now that we finished trimming off the excess material here, now we just trim off this excess material that we have here. If we decide not to trim it off, it'll just sit flat and you could apply the other film on top. You could do that, it's perfectly fine. It's personal preference, but if you don't want to use this extra material, we could trim it off. So I'm gonna show you guys how to go about it. If you want to remove this extra material, you would just find the small gap between this panel and the lower one, poke a hole, and just glide your blade and remove the excess material on the top here. And just do the same on this section. Just be careful when you're doing this. And this is just if you want to remove the excess material that's wrapping around the top section here. That's if you want to do that. If not, you could just wrap it around, and that's how it will look if you decide to trim off the material. But if you don't, you would just wrap it on top and lay it up here. There's different options when going about with installation. And now we move on to installing this piece here. Top piece here, you can start from the middle. It doesn't really matter, just as long as you're covering the chrome as you're going with the installation. So let's say you lay it flat, place the film, and just make sure when you're lifting it and aligning it, you lift it carefully, and it should wrap around here. And you would do the same thing we did here to the other side. So just lift it and start tacking down the film. And then grab your squeegee, start tacking down the film, and the material will just wrap around on the bottom half where we trim. Okay, and that's pretty much it for this installation. If you do happen to have excess material in the top section, you could trim it off, but if you don't, you could leave it as is. And then you'll move on and installing the last pieces on each end here. Okay, so for this piece here, we just made it a bit bigger. That way you're able to tuck in as much as you can on the inside of the panel here. So for this one, just go about tucking in the film as much as you can to make sure you cover all of the chrome. You could use your squeegee to see if you're covering everything. If you're not, just reset. But if you are, then you should be good to go. So just tuck in as much as you can. That should be good. And then just apply the film. And it should look like this. And then we would just trim off the excess material. And that's pretty much it. And the same steps that we did for this side, you would just rinse and repeat for the other one. Once you're done installing, make sure to remove the excess material. And then once you're done removing the excess material, we move on to post heating the whole entire film that we applied on this lower splitter. Okay, so the last thing to do once you finish installing all of the pieces for the lower splitter is just post heating. And then once you're done post heating, you're basically done with the installation for the lower splitter. So now this part of the video will be the installation for the side bezels on the Audi A3. So if yours has the bezel for this part here, this will be the installation for you. So with this one, it's a 3-piece installation. We're going to start by installing the small little piece that goes in the inner curve of the bezel here, and then work our way on installing the last 2 pieces, which will be for this curve and for this other panel here. So we're going to start by installing the inner piece that goes inside this curve first. So it's going to be this piece here. It's this one. Align it right in the center here and make sure you're covering all of the chrome panel from the inside. So it should be like this. What I recommend doing is mostly aligning the film somewhere there. That way the rest of this material covers the whole chrome here. And if you happen to have extra material like this here, that's perfectly fine because we could just trim it off, but just make sure you don't have any fingers on the flat surface. So install it, and it should be like this. And then the extra material, like I said, we'll trim off. So for right now, it's just lifting, tacking down the film, making sure you remove any air bubbles. And it should look flat like this. And to trim it off, find the gap between this plastic trim and the bezel. So the gap would be somewhere here. Find the gap and just trim it off carefully. Take your time. So as you can see, for the piece we did trim off, it's gonna look like that. And then just continue with the rest here. Just take your time. And then just do the same on this edge. And that's pretty much it. And now we can move on to installing either side pieces. So when it comes to installing this piece here, you want to start by aligning it on the curved area here. So place the film and just make sure you're covering the chrome. So it should look like this. And then just help it tack down little by little. And align it to the curve here. Lift it here. Carefully help it tack down. Careful not to crease it. And then just follow along here. And make sure everything is covered. Remember, all the excess material will trim off. This curve here will apply heat. And it should just sit like this. Make sure the top edge here is aligned as well. And that's pretty much it. And we can start trimming off all that excess material we have. This piece here, help it tack down. So it should match like this. If you need to apply heat to help it tack down, you can. Pretty simple. And now trim off the excess material. Trim off the excess material, find the gap where the grill is at. Take your time, make an outline if you need guidance of where to trim. And you just finish off with the rest of the film here. Okay, and that's just applying heat to make sure we tuck in any material that's still popping up, and then any other remaining excess material, we can trim it off. Okay, and that's pretty much it for this piece, and now we would move on to this piece here. So for this one here, align it from this top section first and just work your way to the rest of the piece here. So just give yourself a little bit of extra material to cover the inside here, and it should be like this. Make sure to remove all the air bubbles, so squeegee. And all we're doing is just helping the film tack down. You could tuck in the film on the inside of the bumper, just take your time. And then here, we're just going to apply a little bit of heat just to help the film tack down better. Without applying heat, it will tack down, but it may lift because of the type of curve it is. And then we will trim off the excess material. So trim off excess material. Okay, so now just apply heat to help tack down the film. Check where the areas are that we need to trim, and then once you find it, trim off the material. So once you're done with the whole installation, for the bezel, the last thing to do is pulse heat the whole film. That way we help the adhesive on the film activate faster and it doesn't lift over time. And then once you're done pulse heating, you're completely done with the whole installation. Okay, so that concludes the installation video for the whole front for the 2023 Audi A3. We hope that this video helped you guys out with the installation. If it did, don't forget to drop a like on the video. Make sure you subscribe and turn on that notification bell. That way you don't miss any upcoming installation videos. Don't forget to check out our other Chrome Delete videos for the Audi A3. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.